Welcome back to the Frank Lizzie Show. We're here live at Symposium of Advanced Wound Care, SAWC in Charlotte, North Carolina. Lizzie, I'm glad you're back with me too.
Well, that is a warm welcome. Thanks, Frank. Great to be back here, of course. Today, we're talking about documentation, a hot topic at this conference, but in everyday life as well. As you know, Frank, in all medical fields I've worked in, documentation has been one of the biggest headaches. But in wound care, the nurses feel like it's such a struggle and it's only gotten worse. The patients are even more complex.
Well, Lizzie, absolutely. Let me tell you that in wound care, it's not just filling out that form, paperwork. The challenging is capturing what's happening to that wound. It can get really messy if you're not consistent, if you don't have good measurements, and also images and data.
Yeah, I think that every clinician documents just a little bit differently. Certainly the systems are all different, but when it's hard to track a wound over time, and I've seen that in my EHRs that I've used, it really can impact the care because it becomes completely fragmented. So coordinating care is the other huge headache that we've seen either between agencies, sites, but even specialties. It's terrible. So how do you keep it all straight?
Well, I'll be frank with you.
Yeah.
It really becomes a pain point for us because what you see is subjective information, subjective assessment, poor documentation, fragmented care.
Mhm.
So then when you look at all this, you're spending more time chasing the paperwork than actually treating your patients.
Yeah, and right now, stakes are high. Look at audits, and more than ever, documentation has become the real issue.
Right. So the question becomes, how do we fix this problem? And that's why today we're going to be talking with Swift Medical because I believe they're going to have a game-changing solution to our problem.
So, Scott Nelson, welcome so much to the Frank and Lizzie Show. And we also have Cullen Chiu. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So, Swift Medical, how do you describe to a clinician, let's say you're in the booth and somebody's talking to you, who's overwhelmed by all these challenges we've just talked about? How do you describe to them how Swift is a solution for these documentation hassles?
Well, Frank, Lizzie, appreciate the time to be here today. So it's always good to connect with you guys. But I would really describe Swift is it's a digital wound care system. So think of an enterprise grade solution. It does all these things, but it plugs into your workflow, provides seamless support integration into how you're conducting your patient care around wound. So it's a mobile first platform. That helps you capture high quality wound images and turns that data into really reliable or that information into reliable structured data. So nothing subjective, clear facts of the wound's size, the depth, the progression, and we give all that information back to you in a manner where you can easily see, the trends and information coming from that. So easy capture, easy deployability, easy use, mobile first, and get a lot of good information.
So this is not just a fancy camera. It actually will take the data and actually would put it objectively. And the other thing is it can track the wounds consistently. And probably better yet, it can communicate across these fragmented places.
Exactly. It works across hospitals, outpatient clinics, mobile, wound care providers, home health. Really is built for the whole care team, regardless of where you're providing care. It makes your workflow faster. It makes documentation audit ready, much cleaner, and it's
That's
scalable
important.
across provider
Right.
groups of any size.
Mm. So, a hot topic at this conference is AI. It's not just at this conference, it's all conferences, it's everywhere. So, I hear a lot about the AI powered platforms. But these days, can you walk us through how Swift Medical works for like the everyday clinician? So, like, what happens if you open up the app and you're standing in front of a patient's wound?
Absolutely, great question. So, first you open the app on a mobile device, right?
Hmm.
So, the software runs regardless of what device, what platform that you choose to incorporate. So, it's designed for really super user friendly and mobile first utilization. So, launch the app. From there, you use the device to capture images of the wound, and the system guides you through the practice. So, it's not that we're going to leave it up to you to kind of figure it out. We're really going to guide you through there in a very intrinsic and very seamless fashion. It's going to guide you through where to hold the image, how far to hold the image,
Oh,
without really needing to provide further instructions. So as a result, you're getting very consistent and cohesive, not only images, the accuracy, but as you go back and you're looking at the progressive scans of how the wound is healing, it really makes it very easy and intuitive for you to just get that simple to use, right? We're not allowing you to use it, take an image way up here, take it way down there. The system tells you where to go, and you just push a
Yeah.
button.
And lighting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's helpful. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're
Yeah.
going to work where you are, and we're not going to ask you to change your practice.
Great.
Right. So this is like not like a Polaroid. It actually helps you take the picture the right way.
Do people know what a Polaroid is
Yeah.
now?
So
I know you're old, but
so back in her days, her mom used to take this picture and it would come out right away, and then
Yeah.
you shake it for about 30 seconds, and you never take it the same way again.
So the point is, it's not just
Yeah.
a snapshot. It actually is capturing the picture the right way so that you can see it progress over time.
Exactly. And the system provides that real-time user feedback, right, to adjust distance, to really kind of ensure that just as the clinician, we're not needing you to learn our system. We're going to guide you through it without really, it's to require less of you of using the system. So you're doing more of what you need to do, which is taking care of the patient. So
Yeah.
being a software-first platform, we have controlled calibrations to ensure consistent performance. Color calibration around skin tone variability. If you've
Oh.
got lighting and frequency or changes. So it's really, it's designed to provide you just a simple method to get what you're trying to get, which is an incredibly accurate image very easily and consistently.
Great. So once you have the image, what do you do with it? Like I can imagine, so one, you've dummy proof taking the image, which is half the battle because we know it's not wound care clinicians taking the image sometimes, it's bedside staff or it's untrained staff. So once you get that image, how do clinicians get those measurements, the size? Because I think that's the other half of the battle is how do we objectively measure those wounds?
Right. Well, once the image is captured, all of that is done instantaneously. So it measures the wound size, measures the wound depth, and other key parameters with that we're really evaluating what are the complements of the wound, what makes up the wound, and providing all that information instantaneously, both to the cloud as well as to the provider there. So it really is just, no manual measurements, no adjustments. It really provides a very easy way, press a button, and we're going to give you all the information. Now, we also make it very easy as the clinician, if you disagree, to tell us what it needs to be. So if you feel you wanted to capture, if we missed a segment of a wound that you wanted to ensure is in there, if you've got multiple wounds, or if there's an area of the edge that you don't feel should be included, you can do a finger swipe. So we're really making it easy to give you the information, but also for you to still be the clinician and make the final decision.
Wow. Wow. Because in today's times, when we have regulatory changes and clawbacks, having a true surface area calculation is not only essential, but it may make the difference in an audit.
For sure. And I think the wound depth has been kind of the redheaded stepchild of imaging and wound care. It's not been something that's been consistent, and particularly when you're not measuring it at the same angles, it can be super challenging. But it definitely plays a big role in treatment, especially when we're looking at wastage and how much you need to fill the wound. And it previously got very little attention from CMS. So can you talk a little bit more about wound depth?
Absolutely. So I think I mentioned earlier, just lightly mentioned, right? So we're going to capture automatically the wound, the surface area, and the surface area of the actual edges of the wound. So not just imagine a big rectangle, right? What's the true surface area of the wound? We're automatically calculating the depth. So we're really going to give you a highly precise and accurate understanding of what the complement, what constitutes the area of the wound. So if you're using this to determine an advanced dressing or a skin substitute, it is more important, as you mentioned now, than ever economically to the provider. There is no wastage charged back. Those J-code modifiers are now gone. We've normalized pricing across sites of care. So if you don't align your skin substitute to the area of the wound, the provider is kind of left holding a little bit of a bill. And so this really gives you a much better, understanding of the accuracy of the wound depth all the way to the surface area.
Yeah. Having depth is important,
Yeah, I mean, it's very subjective otherwise. And so how does Swift handle this on the documentation side? Are clinicians still typing notes, or how does this really flow through? Because logistics is a huge pain point as well.
Workflow drives.
Yes.
So the system integrates. So Swift, we integrate with electronic health records where possible, and we're always looking to continue to expand. There are many EMRs, as everybody using this knows. And so as we're working with clinicians, it's understanding how and when we need to integrate with EMR, or are we operating in a standalone where we're passing information in a different fashion. But the goal is to have as seamless as possible of a workflow change for the clinician to bring these advanced modalities and technologies that simply the goal to make their job easier, make their job faster, and allow them to focus on the clinical care. And we're providing a high, degree of accuracy of information to really help complement their role.
Well, it sounds like a workflow saver.
That's huge.
But the question is, how does it keep teams across different sites? And how do you keep everyone on the same page?
Well, good question, Frank. So because the images are standardized and secured in the cloud, we're a cloud-based system, any authorized member is going to have access. So it's really, as we work with our implementation teams, in bringing accounts on, is understanding how they need their team structured. If it's a single provider or if it's multiple providers, do they have other locations? Are they crossing states? Our job is not to set that for them, but to understand how their clinicians or their providers need access to the data and setting it up for them in a manner that supports their workflow that falls into their practice, modalities. And that's, whether in a wound care clinic, a hospital. So really, we scale from a single provider to a large enterprise implementation. So it's just that consistency that's key for coordinated care.
Well, and like in my travels and talking to clinicians, we've come among some resistance in clinicians that maybe are a little bit tech savvy. I've recently talked to one that had a flip phone, and I was, oh, okay. So, in cases where you feel there's a barrier to implementation because of the tech fear, how hard or how easy
Mhm.
is it to implement this into somebody's system?
Big needs. I mean, we've designed it to be intuitive. We have training built in, within the app itself is a learning module. So users, if it's a new provider coming on board, or if maybe they were out for a while, so they can launch a learning module, watch videos of how to use the system, kind of reminders, refreshers. We have a complete learning module system that's on the web portal that they can access, that accounts can also use, and assign training to different team members. So we really are trying to make it easy where, regardless of your mode of learning or how you best react to things, we've got training and support tools regardless of where you are.
Right. And fitting this into the clinician's work could be not only a time saver, but it
Mhm.
can help save frustration. Let me tell you, the communication fragmentation that you have,
Mhm.
and also having the right data.
Mm.
Absolutely. Our goal is to empower clinicians with precise, actionable data. So it supports better patient care, but without adding to their workload. Because understanding, just again, workflow. They've got a prescribed workflow. They've built their business and their practice around that workflow that allows them to scale and build it. We don't want to disrupt that. So how do we plug in and really amplify that? And additionally to that, we have now the Swift Ray.
Mm.
Okay, so what is the Swift Ray?
Well, I put it out here for a while, hoping you'd ask about it. So,
Get distracted.
so Swift Ray is quite the achievement. We talk about the software first, and it's a device that slides over your smartphone. And what it is going to do is it's now going to convert your smart device into a spectral imaging platform. So Swift Ray, it's a multimodal imaging tool that fits in the palm of your hand, slides over your iPhone, and it's going to combine thermal and fluorescent imaging. So now we're
Oh,
getting into really
that's really
looking
cool.
at thermal variations, so you can begin to anticipate where I'm seeing inflammation points that are driving increased temperature, but also bacterial infection detection. So looking at
Oh,
fluorescent elimination of bacterial.
Well, I love thermal imaging. As a matter of fact, I love this technology because as we're going to talk about this, we talk about inflammation that could lead to infection. So not only are we leading into informed point of care decision making, it makes her life a lot easier, makes it more objective, and the documentation is there.
yeah. I would have to think this is pretty easy to implement. Other devices that are a little bit bulkier, but I mean, I can fit this into my pocket and it's mine then. No, no, but this is easy to implement anywhere just to slide it over an iPhone or whatever device they have.
Right.
It seems super easy.
And that's the intent. Again, we're software first with with a hardware component that's going to add to the functionality, add to the utilizations. But again, it's really being software first to apply, easy to use in any setting, whether you're a hospital, whether you're an outpatient clinic, home health, skilled nursing. If you're Frank looking at the thermal variations of fish, because you're wanting to understand, kind of who caught the first fish. So it really applies in any setting, and that way, wounds are. But we also allow that longitudinal tracking, so you're building data along that use. And whether you're doing a thermal image every time, or sometimes you're looking at the bacterial fluorescence, you're always capturing the image and then looking for that wound area reduction. We got depth building up and wound area shrinking in, so really making it easy to just capture all that information.
Okay.
Yes, I do take devices. I forget they're in my pocket, and then I go home with it, and I use it for everything else. And so, having this flexibility and consistency, it really helps cut down errors, gaps in care that we see all the time. And so, especially when patients are moving from one location to the other, because I see that a lot.
Mhm.
You got to restart. And the objectivity, you lose that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think if I was running all over the hospital, this would be super easy just to slide into my pocket and be able to use on any patient. And especially like in the mobile wound care space that has been and maybe still will be, we'll see. It continues to be that
Yeah.
you can just go to the patient with it rather than having something bulky that's sitting at the desk of whatever clinic that you're at.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And wound care is changing, but it's not going away.
Right.
But and the device is used to bring spectral imaging to any user anywhere.
That's
Again,
awesome.
it's the ultimate portability. All right. I can scale up. So now I've got something that's, again, if you're a single provider, if you're a large multi-practice group,
Mhm.
is something that's really going to scale up and apply regardless of where you are. It fits into your workflow.
Oh, great. So now that we've identified it's such a game changer, I would love to hear more from Cullen Chiu, who has been utilizing this device. So, Cullen, thanks so much for joining us on the Frank and Lizzie Show today.
Thank you for having me on.
So, Cullen, you've been leading wound care with Kane with has more than 50 providers using the Swift. What made you decide to bring Swift on board?
Yes, so at Kane Woundcare, we're a mobile wound care provider of over 50 clinicians. And as we were growing and scaling our business, we needed standardization across all of our providers, so that everybody's assessing and documenting the same way. The portability of the Swift has been integral in our growth because we can give this to all our clinicians, like you said, put it right in your pocket
Mhm.
and send them to different nursing homes, different homes to evaluate patients. And at the end of the day, they can go home and sign on to the Swift online dash portal and review their images, review the data points, all at the comfort of their own home without the device.
Oh,
Wow.
that's nice.
And so I'm interested to find out more clinically, how has it made a difference?
Well, we're able to detect infections faster and monitor wounds objectively, track them on a week-to-week basis, and it allows us to make a better treatment plan at the bedside. Patients have also been enamored by the technology. Everybody wants to see what's in our pocket, and letting them see visually their wound progress gets them involved in their own wound care. And as we know, when patients are involved in their wound care, we tend to have better outcomes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we talked about how Swift helps with the documentation and the standardization, but infection is like one of our biggest hurdles in wound care, obviously. So how exactly does Swift help clinicians catch these infections earlier than traditional methods of the scratch, sniff, smell? Yeah.
Well, great question, Lizzie. And as clinicians, early infection detection is critical.
Yeah.
That's where Swift's combination of AI and their ray imaging has really helped our clinicians at the bedside and made a big difference for us. Along with the thermal imaging and the fluorescence imaging, we're able to see what's going on with the wound, and we're able to see if there's any delta in the temperature better and faster than we ever could by feeling the wound for
Oh.
ourselves.
So subjective. That's, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm jealous because the technology is just phenomenal. But let's break it down a little bit. How does it work in the clinic?
Sure, the Swift Ray device does more than just take pictures. With one click of the button, you're able to get multiple data points. With fluorescence imaging, you can track the biofilm. With the thermal imaging, you can track the differences in temperature. And with that, we can see the inflammation that might be underneath the wound that is hidden to the naked eye. And we like to say at our practice, we have the power to see the unseen.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely helpful because making everything as objective as possible in today's market, I think, is critical, particularly when we're talking about audits and clawbacks and things like that. So the images can pick up on that heat and that bacterial activity that we might miss otherwise.
Right. So again, the fluorescence imaging, along with the thermal imaging and Swift's AI, alerts our clinicians to maybe certain areas that they're overlooking with their naked eye, and kind of nudges them to say, hey, maybe this is something you need to look at a little bit further. And again, just guides our decision making better at the bedside.
Yeah. And what I like is that those alerts will let the clinician know to investigate sooner.
Yeah.
No, now you don't have to rely on sending your patient back to the provider, and it takes weeks. You
Right.
can do it point of care, and I love that.
And that helps with our infection prevention and our antibiotic stewardship as well.
Wow.
That's great. And so that early detection really improves outcomes, I would think, for your practice, right?
Yes, it helps us act earlier, and whether it's changing the treatment plan, debriding the wounds, initiating antibiotics.
Yeah.
It gives us objective data to work at the bedside instead of relying on guesswork. And that way we have a better standard of practice.
That's great. So that kind of early detection, I would think, really improves your outcomes and can reduce complications, admissions, things like that. Do you also use the wound fluorescence technology?
Yes, so it absolutely improves our outcomes. And I do personally use the device every day in my clinical practice. I believe it's a powerful tool that we should all have as clinicians. It gives us clear, objective data of a wound at each visit. And it's allows us to avoid hospitalizations, helps our patients heal faster, and just have generally better outcomes.
So, Scott, at Kane Woundcare, that's just one example. Let's talk about the larger organizations, how the providers manage those wounds at a larger level.
So with over 50 clinicians at Kane using Swift, right, the platform supports obviously an enterprise level reporting and analytics and really kind of driving utilization across the organization. It gives leaders the data insights to drive quality improvements, compliance tracking. We've got an entire web portal with compliance reporting, patient-specific reporting, data export and patient reporting. So it really gives you the opportunity to drill down and find that information. And from a scale perspective, right, going from a single provider up to a 50 provider group, if you've got a 100 mobile provider group covering 18 states, or if you're an enterprise level IDN, it really scales regardless of the size. Each person has a device. It's the data. So it's the management of the data and the presentation of the data to be useful and help to drive the efficiencies throughout the organization.
I would have loved that when I was practicing because, I covered 7 hospitals at one point and trying to be at all those places and really understand the wounds because the documentation, relying on nursing documentation may not have been that great. But so the fact that it scales just beyond the patient level when you're there at bedside to something that me as like an administrator could take a look at my reports would have been huge. But then I also think in my role now as a consultant, when we're doing clinical trials, like just looking at tracking those outcomes across the clinical trials would also be super helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're involved in a variety of utilizations, kind of as we talked about in the provider space, where we've got the kind of the protection of economics around the wastage relative to the skin subsize and the depth.
I didn't even think of
We've
that.
got the audit protection mechanism because of the consistency of data. You've got fluorescence, which per practice provides a revenue opportunity for that reimbursement separate from the device. Now, if we pivot to clinical trials, right, the accuracy of the image still contains. So we've got a high level of 95% accuracy of the wound measurement.
That's awesome.
If you look at intra-operator variability at 99% because we've got standardized schemas and workflows that drive through there. So clinical trials, it really gives them confidence in the data as they're building these trials. If you're at multiple sites, if you've got multiple PIs that are really utilizing the system, it scales across the clinical trials, but also gives them very, very clean and objective data to support their goals.
And you know what? All I can think of is what this clinician made a quote. Actually, he was taking Liz's place earlier, Dr. Armstrong. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so what he said is manage what you treat. And so your device, knowing all that data, we can help manage what we treat. And so, but let's talk about what's the most exciting about where wound care is going.
Well, it's becoming data-driven. AI, you mentioned AI a number of times. We see AI everywhere we go.
Yeah.
And certainly at Swift, we utilize AI, but we use it appropriately. So it's, we have one of the largest data sets available. Our AI, artificial intelligence engines are trained on over 34 million clinically validated images. So if we're, prompting you with here's where we feel the area of the wound or here's the depth, it's because we've told it a whole bunch of million times of what that looks like. So we're really, not only do we have a large data set, but it's validated clinically through, through the organization. In wound care, using that structure of AI is really becoming data-driven, looking for earlier detection of problems. So it's not about, what new technology, how is the technology advancing the field? How is it allowing providers to maybe get some of those clinical insights earlier to provide the faster care to the patients, not different care, the same care, but faster, and help them see things a little bit earlier than they may have seen otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. And after the show is over, I want to see the proof. So I tried to be like Scott, and I wore new shoes and rubbed some blisters. So I want
Oh,
to image the blisters on
Yeah.
my feet.
And we
God
can
bless.
mix it with the old school, kind of, smell detection of wounds combined with the thermography.
Not with his feet. I'm not doing that. So, well, thank you so much, Scott and Cullen, for coming on the Frank and Lizzie Show and sharing your insights. This has been super valuable. And I think this direction is exactly what we need. Objective measurements, clean data, and AI driven is exactly what the future of wound care is going to be.
Yeah. And thank you. And be sure to subscribe to the Frank and Lizzie Show so you can keep up with the innovation that's coming up. And we'll see you next in the Frank and Lizzie Show.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.